Alo le ni sambula talo hani talo fakoi kim the modi halo lo kita one talk karaki na kumai halo nem belong ma lo le soifua maua malelangi mama and a very warm welcome family ma Brian Sangala events specialist with episode 11 of Talanoa Moana, highlighting amazing stories within our Pasifika diaspora. This evening, family, we are joined by an incredible, inspirational, creative individual, and let me tell you a bit about them. Aroha Awarau, multi-award winning director, writer, journalist and playwright from Hawera, Taranaki. His career spans journalism, theatre and film. Became a Voyager Awards finalist and secured Oprah Winfrey's only New Zealand interview during her 2019 visit. As a playwright, his works Luncheon, Officer 27 and Provocation were staged in Auckland to critical acclaim. His films Home, Disrupt, and Cherries are screened at international festivals with Disrupt, winning awards in Puerto Rico and Hong Kong. In 2024, he made his directing debut with Puti, a finalist for Best New Zealand Film at the New Zealand International Film Festival. Also directed the documentary Maisuka, premiering at FIFO Tahiti. Aroha is now developing a debut feature film Hidden and an RNZ Youth series, further cementing his reputation as one of Aotearoa's leading storytellers. A proud Māori Samoan Niuean, it is a very warm welcome. Aroha Awarau, kia ora, marosoi fua, whakalofalahi atu. Thank you so much for joining us today, Aroha.
Kia ora e hoa, whakalawhalahi atu talofa, and thank you for having me. And, you know, when you hear back, you know, your introduction about yourself, you have to pinch yourself and you have an out-of-body experience. So thank you for the lovely and kind words beforehand. I really appreciate that.
Awesome. Well, currently, so you've just returned from Melbourne. We'll hear a bit about that. But also, you currently have two of your films which are doing the rounds on the film festival circuit. Tell us about that, please.
Well, I've actually had 4 films since January this year do the festival. You mentioned Maisuka in Tahiti, Puti premiered in Rotorua at the Indigenous Film Festival there, Cherries, which is a comedy, premiered at Māoriland this year, and Faded, which was a documentary I shot entirely on my iPhone and edited it in Hollywood during the screening of Puti at the Beverly Hills Film Festival, debuted in Australia a month ago. So, yeah, I've been quite busy with films in the last year. But also, Puti is playing in Fiji tonight in Suva at the Suva International Film Festival with its Pacific Island debut. And next week, Puti and Cherries will be playing in New York City at the Pacific Island Film Festival in New York City. So I said to someone, I describe my works, my films, my plays, my writing, my stories as my babies. You know, I don't have any children. So I see and I liken to writing a play, writing a film is like having children, because you put all that hard work and sacrifice into creating them. And then when they're ready to, you know, tour the world, you know, you have to let them go and see the wonders of your parenthood, basically. Yeah. So I feel so proud every time I have films or plays that do travel. And also, it's a testament to our stories as Pasifika, as Māori, as storytellers from Aotearoa. I've had the privilege of traveling the world for some of my films, Disrupt and Puti and Cherries, and to see international audiences, how they resonate with Māori and Pasifika stories is so wonderful. They're very curious about the cultural elements in our stories. And you don't really see that when you're in Aotearoa. You don't really see how our films are perceived outside Aotearoa. And that has been a privilege to witness, to see why our films resonate. And just look at Tina. You know, seeing how well received that Pasifika story has touched and moved international audiences around the world. So I mean, that's a testament,
Yeah, even with Jason Momoa and Chief of
Mm,
War, how
yeah.
how much it's just blowing up, and all introducing our stories through
Mm,
a Hawaiian Polynesian lens, which
mm,
it's just gaining so much interest worldwide.
yes.
Now, also, you had you recently returned from Melbourne, doing a bit of training, sharing ideas with other
Yeah.
creatives. Tell
Yeah.
us about that.
Well, I think it was about a month ago. It was less than a month ago. And every year at the Melbourne International Film Festival, they choose a selection of directors from Aotearoa and a
Wow.
selection of directors from Australia. So they're shoulder tapped. And, they identified as filmmakers of the future. Now, the first cohort was 25 years ago, I believe. And,
Wow.
the Aotearoa representative there was Taika. And so many of our Pacifica and Māori filmmakers have gone through this process and have made their features after this process. So the whole purpose of the program, it's the Directors Accelerator Lab, the whole purpose of it is to choose short film directors with the aim to support them in making their feature films.
Wow.
And so it was pretty full on. It was 5 days of watching films and workshops, top people. They flew in people from all over the world to be our mentors. But the beauty of this whole experience was the connections you make, because that's a big part of what we do as storytellers, what we do as filmmakers, are the contacts that we make from all around the world. And, I think there was about 28 of us from Australia and New Zealand, got to meet every single one of them and got to chat with every single one of the participants. And I'm just in awe of some of the stories that are coming out of not only Aotearoa, but outside of Australia. And so it was a wonderful, wonderful experience. And I do have to thank the Directors and Editors Guild of Aotearoa New Zealand and Tui Rufio from that organisation for supporting the Aotearoa directors who went over. It's myself and Saito Lilo, who is a young film director, Pacifica, and Aira Hitaraka, and Ray Edwards. We are Māori, so there was a big contingent of Māori and Pacifica directors that were represented. So, it was a great experience.
Awesome. Talking about stories and storytelling, before we came on air, you were sharing a little bit about your heritage in terms of legacy, with your grandmother being a great storyteller. And can you tell us about that and just the origins in the hawera, which led to this journey? E.T. playing a big part in that.
Yeah, well, my grandmother was born and raised in Niue. She came over to Aotearoa when she was a young woman. She was whāngai by the Allison whānau. So Tamati Allison's grandfather was a doctor in the islands, and he was very good friends with my great-grandfather. He was a head, so my grandmother's name was Doris Head, and he whāngai her to bring her to Aotearoa, better life, opportunities. And it was here in Aotearoa that she met my Māori grandfather. Now, he was a lawyer. So he was a lawyer around the time of Apirana Ngata, and he is from Waipiro Bay in Ngāti Porou. And they lived in Hawera for a bit, because that's where my grandfather had a practice there. And my father was schooled in Taranaki, but they retired and moved back to Waipiro Bay before I was born. But my father met my mum. He stayed in Taranaki, and Waipiro Bay and Hawera at opposite coasts, and it was always 13 hours to drive there. So we didn't really frequent Waipiro Bay as much as we could have because of the distance. But I was really close to my Pacifica grandmother. We were really close in the sense that we shared a passion for storytelling. And because she lived so far away, we didn't really see each other in person, but she encouraged me to write letters to her from Hawera to Waipiro Bay. And I always say that is the reason why I'm a storyteller, the way that I am, because you have to physically write the stories. You have to physically get behind a typewriter or a keyboard. You have to physically put pen to paper, and you actually have to physically write the stories. It's not possible without that. And so my grandmother, by encouraging me to write to her since I was 5, I learnt that practice of writing, of communicating. And that was a very important factor to becoming a storyteller, becoming a journalist, becoming a playwright, becoming a filmmaker, because I learnt the physicality of actually writing. There also my grandmother was an amazing storyteller. She's like my mother, Nina Awarau. My grandmother could tell a really good story. And when we did meet with each other, the fond memories I have is with my grandmother wearing her cotton pajamas and at the bedside telling me bedtime stories. And she told stories that were actual Pākehā stories, but she would kind of change them and spice them up a bit. And I didn't actually know that they were actual like fairy tales and stories, because she would tell it in the way like she made it up on the spot, right? And so, for example, the Pied Piper of Hamelin, and she would pacificify the story, set it in the islands. And I didn't know until later when I heard the story of the Pied Piper of Hamelin that it was actually Hans Christian Andersen, or like a European writer. But I thought my grandmother made it up on the spot while she was telling me bedtime stories. So those are my fond memories of my grandmother. And so when I attribute the reason why I am a storyteller and the storyteller that I am, I always think of my grandmother, my Niuean Samoan grandmother.
Yeah. Another story that comes to mind just in terms of your name, Aroha, I saw in another interview you talked about it at one stage, you were actually looking at changing your name from Aroha, and you had a bit of a, I don't know, a bit of an odd relationship with it until Mum intervened.
Yeah, well, I hated my name growing up. So I'm Māori Pacifica family. I was given a nickname at birth. I'm the youngest child of 6. I'm the youngest moko on both sides. So I was given the nickname Pepe. And that's what I thought my name was when I was growing up. It wasn't until I was 5 years old when I found out what my real name was. And the reason why is when I started school, my mum said, I gave you this beautiful name and I'm not going to let school kids and teachers call you Pepe. I want them to call you by the name I gave you. So when I started school, that's when I found out that my name was Aroha. And so for 5 years, I had grown to this name, Puti. Also, I'm Takatapui as well. And I always felt that Aroha, traditionally is a girl's name. I mean, you can call a boy Aroha as well, but traditionally it's a girl's name. And there's not many boys named Aroha. So I thought it was a target, you know. I always felt that this name was a target. I identified more with Pepe because that's what people would call me. So at school, I was called Aroha, but at home, my whānau called me Pepe. So it's like there's 2 identities, and it was Pepe that I kind of wanted to own. I also went to an all-boys Māori Catholic school. And so, Hatapaora, yes. And so I felt that having a name like Aroha going to all-boys school made me even more of a target. So it made me like really, really want to change my name. And I would tell my mum I wanted to change my name, and she would tell me that's ridiculous and you're not going to do that. My mum died when I was 15, and I actually understood my name as soon as she passed, like straight away what it meant. And what I understood when my mum died was that she had gifted me the most precious gift a mother could give their child, love. That's what she branded me with, her love. And so when she died, I was like, I completely understood, and a little bit embarrassed to ever have been embarrassed by being called Aroha. And so it's a name now I wear proudly. And I always describe, when I say she branded me with her love, it's like she got one of those cattle, like you know, you with the cattle and you go, yeah. And that's what she did when she called me Aroha. She actually branded me with that. And and I'm never going to be embarrassed by my name again.
Yeah.
So she died when I was 15. So that was the wake up call I had at 15. And I think I've embraced it in a way that, you know, love, it's a powerful name to be given. And I feel that if you want to be inspired by a word, then love is the best word to be inspired, to be loving.
Come on.
To love,
Yeah.
to passion, you know? And so it's something that I embrace every day of my life.
Awesome. Yeah. Aroha, of course, you're passionate with regards to the different creative expressions, but before a film and plays and that, journalism was your sort of bread and butter, having done many years as a journo with Māori TV, and then, as I said in the introduction, securing an interview with the one and only Oprah Winfrey. For you, when you were, say, preparing to interview a global icon in Oprah Winfrey, how did you actually prepare for that? And in terms of how you felt looking back on the kōrero, the interview with Oprah, how you felt you went?
How long have you got? It's a very long story. And I've told this, especially around the time when the interview was broadcast. It got so much media. Like, I think on that Sunday, I was in the front page of the Sunday News. I was in like 5 publications. You know, when Oprah is the one that people kind of identify you as the journalist to interview, to get the exclusive, it just was a crazy period. But for me, Oprah is a deeper level for my relationship with Oprah, because I fell in love with Oprah when I was 9 years old. And this is even before Oprah was the famous person and talk show host that she became. The Colour Purple was the film. And Oprah was cast in that. She was an unknown. She had a syndicated regional talk show that wasn't national, international then, so nobody knew who she was. When she did The Colour Purple, she was such an unknown that her name's not even in the original poster. You know, that's how unknown she was. And Whoopi Goldberg was unknown as well. That was her first film.
Wow.
And
Danny Glover.
So yeah, Danny Glover, but he was more experienced. But you know, Oprah and Whoopi, their first films. And so I watched The Colour Purple, and I have spoken about this. You know, growing up in Hawaii was tough because, you know, violence, and sorry, I'm just going to do that. Because of the violence that I experienced, and domestic violence specifically. And, you know, when I was 9, I watched this film about oppressed Black women who were, you know, going through oppression and abuse in their home. And Oprah Winfrey's character was the only one that stood up to her husband and refused to be beaten. And that message really resonated with me because just as a 9-year-old thought, well, there is hope, you know, there is an out, there is strength. And that's what I saw her character to be, Miss Sophia. And so when she became Oprah, like the talk show, I had already had this connection to her. And that's like, you know, this person that had inspired me as a 9-year-old is Oprah Winfrey, right? And so I would race home every day from school. I would tape her and then watch the episodes. And that's why I wanted to become a journalist. I was like, I want to be like her. I want to inspire people. I want to tell people stories in that medium. And so when I heard that Oprah was in New Zealand for 2 weeks to film the Disney film, A Wrinkle in Time, directed by Ava DuVernay, I kind of felt that it was kind of meant to be, and the person that would be granted her only TV interview while she was here was me. You know, I felt it. I felt Oprah's very into the universe, is into surrendering. And I did all those techniques to try and get that interview. And I say to people, like, how did you get Oprah? Well, you have to do what Oprah promotes. Put it out in the universe. Vision boards, which I did. And I say to people that it works because I got the interview, right? And so It was interesting experience because she was so influential in my career and in my life, and to be the one to be granted that opportunity was like, it was kind of really a pinch yourself moment.
Yeah.
And what people don't realize, I was a print journalist when I went to Māori TV. When I went to Māori TV, I was a story producer. So I was the one that found the stories. I wasn't in front of the camera. Oprah interview was the very first time I did an on-camera interview. So I can't believe that very first time was with the legend that had interviewed, Nelson Mandela and Michael Jackson and Whitney Houston and world leaders. And I was the one that was interviewing her in the medium that she made famous. And it was my first time in doing a TV interview in that way. And it was Oprah Winfrey. So it was quite overwhelming in that sense. So I remember, and I always say this as well, I was so connected to Oprah. I compare it to if a Christian met Jesus, but Oprah was my Jesus. So just imagine how nervous and how, there's no rule book to tell you how to act when you meet someone of that importance in your life, right? Yeah. And so I was like not myself because I felt like I don't want to muck this opportunity up. And the thing that you do, what I felt to do to not muck it up is to not talk. Because if you don't talk, you can't say anything that might be embarrassing or you might regret. So I remember if you watch the interview, it's this really interesting dynamic because it kind of works because I felt like she was kind of pulling me in because she felt my resistance. Sure. And of course I had to know how to present, like that's my first time. So I'm still learning how to present and how to interview live on well, it wasn't live, but on camera. And I sensed that she could feel that. And then so she was kind of like reaching out to support. And so when you see the interview, there is that dynamic and it works.
Wow.
And after the interview, like people actually thought that we were friends because of that little dynamic. But I was scared. I was, when I, before the interview, me and Carmen Parahi, the producer for Native Affairs at the time, was at Māori Television, we prepared the questions. And so when I sat by her, it was quite interesting because I had to be professional and I had to not freak out and I had to, be composed, cameras on you. And that was hard because all I wanted to do was faint. But then I had to go through motions, but I knew the questions so well that I could be on autopilot.
Nice.
Right. So I was on autopilot and I remember thinking in my head, as I was asking the questions, the two things that were going through my head is get through the questions and don't faint. I had to keep saying to myself, don't faint, And I'm actually quite proud of myself because if you do see the interview, you can't really tell that that's what was going in my head.
Wow.
Also, Oprah was like a touchy-feely person, and we were sitting so close to each other. I mean, I also mentioned that I got to interview Oprah in heaven because we're right next to Lake Pukaki. We had the mountain ranges in the back. So normally when you interview people, and especially celebrities, you're in a sterile room or you're on a red carpet. But I got to interview Oprah in this beautiful heaven in Aotearoa. And as I was interviewing her, you could hear the waves going in and out. It was just like a dream. And I not only got to have that moment in terms of the interview, but I was allowed to stay on set all day and spend that time. So it wasn't just a fleeting interview. It was having a moment on set. And, the experience was so profound that a month after that experience, I would wake up from my sleep every day and go, I had a dream that I interviewed Oprah. Like I would actually wake up thinking it was a dream, and then reality was set, and I was like, no, it's not a dream. It happened. But I think that experience was so profound for me because I definitely willed it. Yeah. Who would think that one day you go to your news producer, I'm going to get Oprah. That's what I said to Carmen. I said, I'm going to get Oprah. And of course, they're like, oh, yeah, good for you. I can try. And 5 days. I sent the email on Thursday.
Wow.
I got the call on the Monday to fly down to Lake Pukaki that next day. So it was all quite quick. Like I said, when I got the call, I was asked to come down the next day. So I didn't really have the time to register and to, for it to set in, because it was just so whirlwind. But with that experience, it's kind of profound in a way, because first and foremost, it's the first time I've actually willed it to the universe. And it's the first time I actually did things that Oprah encourages to realize your dreams.
Yeah.
And also, it just, from that experience, I thought, what can I learn from that in terms of what the universe is trying to say? And for me, it's just an encouragement for all of us to set your standards high and reach for your dreams. And I try and incorporate that in all my stories, all my films, and it's a reassuring mantra for me to live by that motto.
It's so awesome, Aroha, because for many broadcasters, journalists, she would be, right up there on the sort of Mount Everest of guests that you would, on your dream list. And yet for you, as you just shared, your first time out in an interview, you get to interview Oprah.
Yeah.
Now, I was just thinking, a fan watching The Color Purple, but I want to touch on now in terms of journalism and the transition into film for you, because one of the early projects for you in a film production was actually What Becomes of the Broken-Hearted, which make some of the themes not too dissimilar from The Color Purple. How did that talk us through the transition from journalism into film and how that first opportunity came up for you, please?
Sure. So I loved film growing up in Hawera, and film was an escape for me. I got all these storytelling platforms, but film was my first love, because growing up in Hawera, I escaped to the cinema. I rented movies, and I saw most of the films that informed my aesthetic in film during that period. And so I grew up thinking, if you need to go to university, and you go to university to study the thing that you love. And so I went to Waikato University and I studied film. Then the last kind of few weeks of my degree, I was looking around for work in film and saw that What Becomes of the Broken-Hearted, the sequel to Once Warriors, was being made. And it was being made around the time I was finishing my studies. And so I just called, just went in the phone book and just called and said, I'll do anything to be on this film. I just finished my film degree. And Liz DeFiore, actually, she was the locations manager at the time, got my letter. It was a letter. This was before emails. So she got my letter, and she didn't have anything for me, but she put the word around to all the departments. And Pauline Balkett, who was the costume designer, said, we need someone to help us make the gang patches. And so I said, I'll do anything. So I did. I don't know how to sew. And I cut out so if you look at the gang patches and What Becomes of the Broken-Hearted, the sequel to Once Warriors, if you see them, I did all of the cutting of the stenciling, and there was one gang that had like a phoenix motif at the back, and it was quite integral. So I did all that. I cut out all the letters. I assembled them all together to make the patch. And there were 2 gangs, remember? And so there were a lot in both gangs, and all those gang patches I helped to make. It was really tough work. And then when the gang patches were made, there was no need for me. My job was done. And of course, the film was being shot. And so I actually hustled again to get a job in unit. And so unit on a film is the people that are the first to arrive, last to leave, long hours. They're the first to make sure that the set is set up and, packed down again, make sure the rubbish is all cleared, make sure the locations are left how, you arrived, but also you're the ones that make cup of teas, and you're the ones that, do all that work and support the crew and staff. And this is a funny story. We had a lot of night shoots in Broken Hearted, and I could make a great fluffy Milo at nights, right? And the casting crew, and we had Ian Yoon, we had Timo Morrison, you had the Once Were Warriors, like legends on set, and we're looking forward to the fluffy Milos. Or even asked me, are you making your fluffy Milos? And the funny thing is, I said I spent thousands of dollars to get a film degree. I spent 3 years to study film. And the only thing that was worth the skill that actually made an impact when I worked on my first film was the ability to make a good Milo. But I loved, but I did love film study. I did love those 3 years because we analytically analyzed film, we applied theories to certain films, and I loved it. And so it wasn't a wasted experience because I spent 3 years to get a degree in what I loved. And that's what I say to people. I used to say to my nieces and nephews, what do you love? That's the thing that you should study or do. You love animals? Become a vet, And so that's what I did. Yeah.
Nice. Aroha, when you look back now in terms of your career as if we're looking at filmmaking, because some people, oh yes, you should go to film school. Others, oh no, you can learn everything you need to know on a film set. For you, when you're looking back now, are you one side or the other, or it's up to the individual?
Well, film has changed. Making films have changed. So this year, I made a short film entirely on my iPhone, edited, did the poster, edited and did everything under 2 hours in between screenings of at the Beverly Hills Film Festival on the set of where they have the Oscars. And that was not possible when I went to film school. So the nature of film has changed, technology has changed. And a lot of people like Taika and Jane, their trajectory to films have been similar but different, right? In New Zealand and around the world, the star in feature films is normally a short film because it's kind of like a smaller scale of a feature, and it shows your aesthetic, and it shows production companies, and it shows people who want to fund a feature that you're capable of making a film, telling a story in a smaller scale. So the most common thing to do for feature film directors is to make a short film, and most filmmakers have. So that hasn't really changed, but the direction to get to that stage, people come from advertising, people come from university degrees, people come from other storytelling industries like playwriting. So it's a different way to get to that stage, but the making of a short film, the writing of a short film is normally the first step, and that hasn't really changed. But also the accessibility to make films has changed because you can now do it on your iPhone. You can now just grab a group of friends and someone's got an editing program or a camera, a RED or SLR even. That's how you can make films. And that has changed the technology as well.
Aroha, so you've done short films, and we've touched on that, but you are currently working on your feature film. Can you tell us more about that and where you're at currently in the journey?
So it's been a busy year. So last year I was chosen one of 8 Māori feature film writers as part of the MISA, which stands for Māori Land I is Indigenous Screenwriting Accelerator Program. And what that was is 8 selected Māori screenwriters or feature film writers were chosen to live in Otaki, where Māori Land is based, for 3 months to write our features. And it was supported by Sundance Institute in US and Imaginative in Canada. So we lived together. It was like, 8 screenwriters living together. It was like film school, writing school. We worked together on our projects, supported each other, upbeat each other, and we were the inaugural program for that. And then at the end of it, we were paired up with producers. The producer of Hidden, which is the film that I'm writing, is Jason Taylor. And then as a rōpū, we all travelled to Imaginative Festival in Canada earlier this year to pitch our films. And where that's at now, it's in early development stage. Me and Jason are working together to get the funding, and we aimed for 2026 to try in production. So that's Hidden. Also, I've been selected one of 4 international Indigenous screenwriters for the Imaginative Feature Film Lab. And that's a year program where I get to have the support and the mentorship to write my other feature, which is Redemption League. And it's about a league team in the prison, in the maximum security prison, and how one character who comes up with the idea of appeasing the gang tensions in prison by forming a league team, how it's redeeming his own demons. So that is what I'm writing now through the Imaginative Feature Film Screenwriting. Also, I'm working with Ngaire Fuata with a lot of my projects.
Yes.
And Ngaire and from Sunpits.
Yes.
And so a lot of our projects are at development stage, and we are actually also working on a teenage Pacifica Cook Island drama with Puti, Talanoa and Ane Arapai as writers who are from the Cook Islands. Puti grew up in the Cook Islands, and so that story is called the CCC, the Coconut Climbing Crew, and it's about it is a comedy for our youth, and it's about a young Cook Island Māori teenager who finds his place in the world by discovering that he is good at climbing trees, coconut trees especially, and then a Cook Island mama sees his talent and wants to train him for the World Championships.
Man.
And so, so a lot of things happening.
Aroha, it's so diverse in terms of subjects for your short films and with your feature length film. Where do the ideas and talk us through the process in terms of your themes and how you happen upon ideas and how much the stories are from your own personal or something that you may have seen as a journo, etc.
Well, I must add something we haven't mentioned is stand-up comedy. I am a stand-up comedian as well, and that was kind of like one of the first written creative platforms that I started. When I worked on Broken Hearted, I worked in the film industry for about a year. To be honest, I got burnt out, and my friends said, you need a break from the industry, get a real job, and 9 to 5. And so I looked at the job selection, and there was a job at the bank, and I thought, well, you can't get normal 9 to 5 than the bank, right? And so I thought I would just apply for this job, and I didn't really plan to stay as long as I did at the Bank of New Zealand, but I was there for 4 years. And then because I'm a creative person, as you know, I thought I need to find a creative outlet while I'm doing this kind of desk job, at the bank. And it was 2000, the new millennium. I thought, why not do something new, stand-up comedy? So I became a stand-up comedian. I left the stand-up scene in 2004 after becoming a finalist at the Raw Comedy Quest, which is an annual competition to find the best new comedian, and also being selected as a contestant for the world's first reality TV competition about stand-up comedy. So, there was a kind of a trajectory of this career, which I left in 2004. The reason why I left in 2004 is because I was attacked physically, not after a gig or anything, but during the time I was doing stand-up comedy, and it was impacting and affecting my performance on stage, and that's why I walked away. And so that's an important thing to mention, because it was kind of the first thing that allowed me to work at the bank for so long. So it gave me that creative balance, right? And stand-up is, what I love about stand-up is, first and foremost, it's not easy to make a room full of people laugh, and that's just a thrilling feeling when you can do that. Secondly, as a creative, stand-up is one of the only few creative platforms where you not only write the story, but you're performing the story. So, and you're also there and you get the audience reaction straight away, right? And so that's what I love stand-up as a creative person. But I never intended to come back to stand-up when I left in 2004. What brought me back was Cycling Gabriel. And stand-up that was 25 years since I stood on the stand-up stage. And I was asked to be part of a comedian benefit of all Māori comedians at the time. And these are like hip current comedians like Kura Forrester and Kura Turuwhenua and Courtney Dawson. And, they were like, the new generation of comedy, right? And so they asked this old koro, they said, we heard that you did stand-up, Albert Baus, who organised it, would you like to join? And I never considered coming back until they asked me to do this benefit. And as we know, Cyclone Gabriel impacted Ngāti Porou whānau, and my grandfather is from Waipiro Bay, my dad's from Waipiro Bay, and I really wanted to give back and contribute to the relief effort there. And I thought this is the only way that I can contribute to that for a fundraiser. And I didn't know how I was going to be on stage. I didn't know if it was going to be anxiety again. I didn't know it was going to be funny, but I thought it was for a good cause. It's for the kaupapa. I will turn to stand up. And I did it, and it was a hit. Each joke landed, everybody was laughing. And I remember looking at the audience, and I remember seeing one person holding their stomachs because they were laughing so hard. And the love of comedy came back at that moment. Nice. And then I thought, I'm going to actually give it a good go now. Like, I left, I didn't think I was going to come back, but now that I've got the taste of it again, I'm going to give it a good go. So this year I've actually given it a good go, and I'm actually filming a documentary, like a feature film documentary about my return to comedy. And so I wanted to mention that because it's an important part of my storytelling journey. And so your initial question was, how do I juggle the different platforms and different genres? I say this, and when I was a child, storytelling was kind of the only thing that kept me alive. I wrote my first story at 8 years old. It was a murder mystery about who murdered Humpty Dumpty and pushed him off the wall. And from that, it wasn't a piece of genius by any means, but I think that the teachers identified the originality of the idea. There was some jokes in there as well, and I thought, for 8-year-olds to come up with these jokes. And so I remember them like talking to my mother about it. They were like, oh my God, this 8-year-old, your son, has some kind of talent. But they also saw how the audience reacted to the story. Like, they thought it was funny. And so I learned that storytelling is a two-way communication process. It's a person telling the story, but it's also the audience is as important. And so my mum encouraged me to pursue writing. I won my very first short story competition at 13. So I was winning prizes at a young age, got into debating, and I mapped out my life at 8. I said, when I grow up, I'm going to be a storyteller, I'm going to be a writer, and I want to do all these things. Film, preferably, because that's my passion, but I want to, try all these different platforms and telling stories, our stories, Māori stories, Pacific stories, my stories. And the thing is, like, when you map that out at 8, when you go through trauma at young age, when you lose your mother at 15, those are triggers that could ruin a vulnerable young person's life. But because I had this goal of what I wanted to be, I had to survive those moments. And so storytelling was my means of survival from 8 years old. And, you know, I always said to myself, you've got to survive this, because if you don't survive this, you won't be able to do the things that you promised yourself that you would do.
Wow.
So what I say to people, I feel like I am able to slot into these different facets of storytelling, because when it becomes your means of survival, there's no other way that the outcome could be but be successful. You know.
Aroha, over the course of our Talanoa kōrero this evening, there have been a number of examples you've cited in your life where you've either manifested to the universe with Oprah, or you've gone and hustled getting your first job on a set with what becomes of the broken-hearted, and that. For our young people that are watching this, what is the thing, or what is the one thing for you that, in spite of maybe self-doubt, in spite of maybe not having the knowledge, maybe not having the skill set, whatever, but continually you just push past that fear? What was that for you that helped you to push past and then to come out the other end?
I feel like the inspirations you have in your life, and, you know, for us Pacifica and Māori, it's our queer, it's our koro. Because everything I do, and I had talked about the journey of where I've gotten to, it's because of my mum, it's because of my grandmother, you know, it's their legacy. And, you know, that's why I acknowledge them in this journey. And we all have people that love us, you know, we all have our queer, we all have whoever that person is that sees something in us and encourages us from, not only, doesn't even have to be from a young age, but, you know, at some point, right? And it's family, you know, it's those precious relationships and connections that you formed. Because everything I do, I wear my grandmother, I wear my mother on my sleeve. And we all, as young people, have those people in our lives. And even if it's a school teacher or if it's someone in church, they're there. And it's using those people that come into our lives to get us through the tough times. I lost my mother at 15. I lost my grandmother 2 years before that, or a year before that. So the two most precious people that I've acknowledged for who I am today, as a storyteller especially, I lost when I was really young. But the legacy and their love and what they showered me with it shows in my mahi and the things that I do. So I think that's what the key is.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, with that, it is a very big thank you. Ngā mihi, whakaue lahi mahaki, whaafatai tele lava, Aroha Awarau. I've been so blessed this evening, and thank you so much for joining us this evening and sharing your amazing journey, Aroha, and looking forward to seeing more on your highlights reel. Thank you. Thank you so much. Now, to our viewers, links to Aroha's, you can follow Aroha's journey on Facebook and Instagram, and we've included those links in the description for our kōrero this evening. Please like, subscribe for more great content, and join us next time when we will share another amazing, inspirational story from within our Pacifica diaspora. Thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. You too. Ka kite.
Ka kite.